Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our third episode of Remedy Truth Podcast. I am Rita Townsend, your host, and I have decided to talk to you today about waiting. Some people don't even like the word waiting, but aren't we designed from the moment that we are conceived that everything is about waiting, yet we kind of fight that, don't we? Where in your life, maybe currently or recently, have you had to wait? You probably could come up with a pretty big list really fast on different areas where you've had to wait. It's January the 20th. So we are almost 3 weeks into 2026, new year. Of course, New Year's resolutions are made, they're broken. National Quit Day is already passed. Whether you believe in New Year's resolutions or you believe that you can just change things at any given moment, we are renewed and refreshed every day, every hour, every minute, every moment. If you truly believe that, that's what's going to happen. So, so I always love to kind of share with you current stories of my topic of the day. And so, waiting. I actually had planned on recording another episode for you probably a week and a half ago. And life happened. Just as you heard in some of my other episodes, life was happening. My daughter moved out, and then, with my back injury, and then my daughter just had her wisdom teeth taken out almost 8 days ago. And she had to have stitches and just some complications and things. She ended up on my couch for 4 days, and I was nursing my back injury, taking care of her with her medications and making her like broth and, different types of food. Those of you that have kids that have gone through wisdom teeth extraction, it can be very simple or it can be very complicated, but it's usually no fun. It's usually no fun. And so you're kind of at the mercy of how you're feeling, what you can and can't do. You start to take things for granted when you have to wait, right? So I was waiting. I was waiting on her, hand and foot, fell asleep on the couch with her, was getting up at 3:30 in the morning to give antibiotics and different things. And so that's a kind of waiting. Then we have like waiting on a, call from the doctor. We have waiting on our paycheck so we can pay bills. We have waiting on, the status of our job, or waiting to see who gets downsized in the office, or what are some examples? Like, think of some things that you've had to wait for. Some of them can be very simple, from, you place your grocery order to be delivered by Kroger, HEB, or one of your favorite grocery stores, and you're waiting on that grocery order to come in, just to find out the one reason you actually placed the delivery was for a specific item. So you added other items, and then that grocery order comes and the one thing you needed isn't there. Right. So sometimes we wait just for a no. Sometimes we wait for things to pivot, or we get redirection even after we wait. And it's easy to be frustrated, right? It's where you put your focus when you're waiting that determines whether you grow from it or get bitter from it. And sometimes we kind of do a little bit of both, and then we learn from it later once we've waited. And what I've learned is the more that we wait, the more that we are justified, the more that we develop, right? We develop our patience. From the time we're born, we are promised long suffering. If you look at the fruit of the Spirit, the promises of the 9 fruits of the Spirit, long suffering is in certain different translations of the Bible. What's so interesting to me that I've noticed, because I always clung to that understanding we were promised long suffering. Well, long suffering can be waiting, the not having patience, having to wait for the thing that you want, or the worry, or not knowing what's going to come down the line, right? That waiting, it can be scary. It can be, the what ifs, and, trying to prepare for something that may or may not be coming, right? And so I think sometimes we can get caught up in that, and it can be scary. It can be a challenge to not understand that we're supposed to suffer. Like Romans chapter 8, if you read the whole thing, he promises that our suffering is a part of it because we suffer along with Christ, which is where our reward of our eternal salvation and our, eternity with him is justified because we suffer alongside him. And so you may think, well, that sounds crazy, but if you dig into a little bit, I did a few years ago and I did some spiritual journaling, which I plan on talking to you guys about. I'm waiting to get to that with you guys. I have so much content, but I'm waiting to have those moments to be able to record that and share that with you so that it's beneficial. And so in the long suffering, it's like, oh my gosh. But what I found is a lot of translations take that out. They take out the word long suffering, and in 9 fruits of the Spirit, you'll find long suffering in some places, and in others, you'll find that it's been replaced with self-control. Self-control. So that can kind of be like waiting, right? That can kind of be like, working through patience building and, having self-control also involves patience in response, patience in not reacting. And so they're all tied together. But I think what I'm finding as I've researched and looked in different areas is there's a lot of people out there that didn't like the word long suffering. And so they thought, well, let's use the word self-control because that's just nicer. It's nicer. Well, sometimes if we are to be the salt of the earth, we can't keep sugarcoating the gospel, wouldn't you say? I'm not a sugarcoat type person. I have a lot of tact. I have a lot of heart with the things that I do. I believe we can speak the truth in love. God calls us to speak the truth in love, but he doesn't call us to change the truth. He's still going to put it out there. It's still going to be bold and it's still going to be the truth. But we have to be careful with how we reshape things so that it's more acceptable to our weak spirits, our gentle skin. But we have to also understand that the truth can sometimes hurt because that creates change. That creates that. So let's get back to waiting. But I wanted to kind of sidebar on that because waiting is promised in the fruit of the Spirit list if you look at self-control or long-suffering. Because waiting in line at the store, or if you go into Ross at Christmas time and you have one item that you want, right? You have one item, and then you look at this long line that snakes around 3 or 4 times and compresses into the front of the store, and you're thinking, okay, I have this one piece of clothing, these pajama pants, this pillow, or this Christmas item. And then you look at that long line and you say, do I really feel like it's worth it? And that's what you have to ask yourself when you're waiting. Now, if you look at some of the people in the Bible, I want to bring some of this. Now, if you're not very familiar with the Bible, that's totally fine. I'm just going to give you a couple of characters, people. They're not characters, but they are if you're reading it as a book. But understand, they were real people. It is proven, it is true. These are real people, real accounts. There is more written theological evidence that the crucifixion was real, and the stories that were translated from many different people, more than probably any other account in history. So people who think that this is not real, I want you to really dig into the theology of it. This is very fascinating. Watch Case for Christ is a great, there's a movie. I'm not sure. I think there's a book, but there's a movie that I saw on the Angel app that's very remarkable about a man that is trying to prove that the crucifixion is not real. And through his research, he's finding that it's like impossible that it wasn't real because there's so many accounts of it. So back to waiting. Y'all are waiting for me to get to the point, right? So I wear this shirt. I want to show you this shirt. So I got this. This is from The Chosen, and Matthew says this in The Chosen. If you've never watched The Chosen, I a huge fan, advocate of The Chosen, and owned all the seasons. In fact, my husband is an extra in season 6 of The Chosen, which will be released sometime later this year, hopefully. And it's the crucifixion season. And so you'll see the different characters. I say characters, they are the disciples. They depict real people from the Bible and their stories. If you haven't ever really read the Bible, or you're not sure that you are a Bible reader, or you're not a reader in general, and you're not sure how to identify, I would encourage you to watch The Chosen. Even if you think, I'm not sure I'm a believer, watch it, because these are true stories that are depicted. Dallas Jenkins, I actually had the pleasure of meeting him at the Chosen retreat back in October, which I'm going to do a whole episode on that. And my husband may join me on this podcast to kind of share through that dynamic and that story, because it was life altering. And I had been waiting. I'd been waiting for answer to a question that I had for God for 2 years. And at this retreat, I had the opportunity to be immersed in the presence of God and be surrounded by people who love the Lord and people who were huge fans of the show. There was only 100 of us there at Camp Powerless in Midlothian, Texas, about an hour and 10 minutes from me and my husband. We went to this retreat. We got there Wednesday. We were there till Sunday. And it was life-changing. I didn't really look at my phone the entire time. I spent most of my time with the Lord and with God's word. And we got to meet the creator of The Chosen and some of the cast members, which is just very memorable. Get to spend time just with so many different people that are a part of the show, put on the show. We're going to be going to Chosen Con in February, which is a lot more people. So this was a very intimate setting. And I got an answer. I got an answer to a question that I had been asking, and I've been waiting for a couple years for the answer. And so I love this statement right here. I have only one thing to do today. And on the back, it says, follow him. And that was something that Matthew, one of the disciples, he was a tax collector prior to following Jesus. He says, all I have to do is follow him. He's like, follow Jesus. He said, I don't have anything else that I have to do. So in the waiting, having this, like the days that I'm impatient or the days that I'm challenged, I remember that time at the retreat. I remember the answer that God gave me, which was a no, by the way. There's a whole other topic on when God says no, what to do with that. But it actually was what prompted me to start this podcast that had been on my heart for a long time. And there is a butterfly on the icon for this podcast, and I'll tell you that story another time. But there's a significance to it, because that butterfly visited me while I was at the retreat during the time when God said no, and he brought me a sign of comfort through the butterfly, which is transformation. And transformation is not fun. It's not pretty. It's bloody. It's horrific, especially for the butterfly. But it's the result. It's the result. So when we're waiting, when we're in the cocoon phase, when we're not getting answers, it's frustrating. But when we remember, I only have one thing to do, especially if you are a Christian and you follow, Christ, and you believe in God, and you believe that Jesus died for us and gave us this opportunity. He promises long suffering. He promises waiting, but he also promises so many other things with it if we don't focus on the long suffering part, but we focus on the promise from it, the wings, the beauty that comes in the waiting. Think about your children. Think about, as a parent, if you're a parent and you have children and you're constantly saying, no, not yet, not right now, or never, or whatever you're saying to them. Or, my daughter's 12. She wants to do all this big girl stuff because she has a sister that's about to be 20, right? My oldest daughter's 20 and my youngest is 12. Well, my 12-year-old doesn't want to wait. She doesn't want to wait for certain things. She's not allowed to have a phone, and, she's waiting for that. But think as a parent, we are saying you have to wait to our child because we want them to have that time, that seasoning to build their character, to build their learning and their understanding. It's a part of protection. It's a part of our endearing love. It's not to make them suffer and hurt in the wrong way. So there's times when my daughter, Elena, when she asks me for something and I say, well, you're gonna have to wait. I say yes to things because I know it's in your best interest. As your divine and loving parent, I say this to you because I have been entrusted with your life. God promised to, for me to be your mom for this time in your life. And then I have to let her go and set her free. She belongs to him, right? And that's a very hard thing to do. But in that time, I have to make her wait. That's a part of my job as a parent because I tell her, I say, well, I'm making you wait because I love you. I'm saying no because I love you. And I've gotten to where I get the stink face, right? The frowny face. I said, so now I say, I'm saying you have to wait because, and she goes, because you love me. That 12-year-old teenager coming out, but she's got a big heart and she understands. And I think when we teach our children why we're doing things, it does kind of help a little bit. But when the Lord is making you wait, when situations that you feel like you're just in so much pain mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're like, why, God? Why do I have to? Why is He making me wait? Why is He making me wait? Right? It's because He loves you. Just like we do the same thing to our children. And, once you become a grandparent, as I hear, I don't have any grandchildren yet, but I do have one that's married. It's different when you're a grandparent because you get to give them candy and get away with things that, as a parent, you have this job to teach. So you're teaching them to wait. You're teaching them to wait. So even as a parent, when you find out you're pregnant, we don't just get the baby, right? I had to wait the 9 or 10 months and, watch my belly grow, watch my body tear and fall apart and do things I was humiliated to do in public because I was like, carrying this child. So some of the most beautiful things that come in this world come from waiting. Aged wine, aged things a lot of times have a lot more value. So just remember that there is power in the waiting. There is seasoning. Value is being added in the waiting. So we have to be careful where we put our focus when we have to wait. If you're waiting on something and you're frustrated and you're angry about something you can't control, then what happens is you're angry at the thing you can't control. And that takes on a whole nother level of stress for you and for your body and for your experience. If you're going to get from point A to point B on a boat, and you get to decide whether that ride is joyful or that ride is fearful or what if or anger, you're still going to get to B because God is going after us. He's already there. He's at the end and He's for us. Our journey to where He already is kind of up to us. So if you're going to be in the line at Kroger or HEB or at the pharmacy or wherever you're in line, and you can sit there and huff and puff and frant, and everybody around you can feel your energy. And it's a terrible situation because not only are you now creating this frustration and this irritation, what we shoot out from our bodies, our energy will spread and grow. And so we can either shed light on things and make things positive, or we can be the drop of vinegar in a glass of water, and everybody around us is now affected. So do you want to be the fountain or do you want to be the drain? And that's a decision that you have to make with every season you're faced. Okay. So just think like your Heavenly Father is making you wait because He's doing something for you that's beneficial, right? We make our children wait till they're the right age before they can do things, experience things, have things, before they can drive, before they can vote, before they can get married, before they can, have kids, have a job, all these things, because there's power in the waiting. There's seasoning. There's special things that happen. So let's talk about a couple people in the Bible. I just love to some of these stories just gripped me because I was like, there's just no way. But the more I've dug into the Gospels and the stories, there's so many stories. And if you don't like to read, watch The Chosen, because The Chosen really lays out what is from the Bible, as close to what is from the Bible, but allows people that are believers or not to follow along with these stories and understand what God was doing through all of their journeys. And it kind of gave me a little hope in some of my waiting because I said, okay, well, I don't have to wait that long to have a baby. I don't have to wait that long to free Israel. I don't have to wait that long to get my dream met. So I want to read a couple of these. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. So Elizabeth and Zechariah, I love this one. You've heard this one, maybe. They waited for their miracle child. And Elizabeth was in her 90s, you guys. She wanted a child her entire life. And the Lord promised her a child. And she waited her entire life, not 10 months or 5 years or through 20 years of in vitro fertilization stuff. Like, she was 90, okay? She was in her 90s. And she believed in the promise that God gave her that she would have a child. And the thing I want you to get is God's timing wasn't late, it was purposeful. Okay, it was purposeful. And so she gave birth to John the Baptist, and he prepared the way for Jesus. They were cousins. He prepared the way for Jesus. So she had to, for her to be the chosen one to give birth to John the Baptist, it had to be in the right timing. For when Jesus was also almost the same age, they were going to be, he was making a way for Jesus. It all had to line up, right? So if she had had a child when she wanted to on her timeline, first of all, she wouldn't have made history, but she would not have been a part of that story. I mean, wouldn't you wait to be a part of that story? But can you imagine? I can't even imagine being like 90 years old and trying to have a child, but knowing also that God promised that. And she clung to that. And the moment it happened, she already knew it was going to happen. It was her faith. It was her faith. Now, Moses spent 40 years in Midian because he was going to be the deliverer of Israel, but he was trying to rush God's promise. He was trying to rush things. And so he spent 40 years in Midian waiting, because God wanted to refine his character. God wanted to refine his character in order for him to get that assignment from the burning bush that, it was his time. But 40 years, can you imagine? Some of us for 40 days, like, we think that is an eternity. But think of the things that happened through that because of the waiting, right? King David, 15 years. He was a teenager, and for 15 years, he was a shepherd. He chased the lion. He defeated Goliath. He had all these incredible parts of his story. But for 15 years, he was hunted. He was hunted by Saul. But he had to live off of trust and not force that he would be king. He was already declared that he was going to be king. But Saul was king at the time and hunted him. And he had to grow through that, but knowing that he just trusted that God had ordained it, God had promised it, and he had to go through that, being hunted, and still end up, he was king when it was the right time. King David. And then Sarah and Abraham, they waited 25 years for a child. And it wasn't canceled by, our promise is never going to be canceled by weakness. And so Abraham and Sarah, they waited 25 years. I know several couples that have gone through losing children, miscarriages, trying to get pregnant, trying to have a child. Can you imagine 25 years? And back then, a long time ago, very different medical options, different life options, different everything. So there weren't all these things to occupy their time, and social media and playing with a phone and all. It was just waiting, quiet waiting, if you can imagine. And then Joseph, he waited for his dream. He waited for his dream 13 years. He went from being a favored son to then being enslaved. He was betrayed by his brothers. He was enslaved. He was a prisoner, and then moved to being second in command in Egypt. So, that was a 13-year journey. But the thing that was promised was God was working behind the scenes. So even if you don't see God, he's in the details. He's working through the details. And I say that all the time when I look at something and I think, well, that's terrible, or, oh, that got delayed, or, this thing happened, or there's a flat tire over here, or, I had all these things planned. I was going to do this podcast and I was going to have it all written out and it's all great. boom, I spend 10 days not able to even sit at my desk because of back pain and, my daughter's surgery. And she also got a flat tire somewhere in there, and just all these different things that kind of we think get in the way, but they're really, they're helping to season us so that when it comes, we're ready, and it's ready, it's prepared. Could you imagine trying to rush baking a cake? Guess what happens? Like, you have all the ingredients, right? You mix them up in a bowl, and you got the temperature right on the oven, and you don't put the batter into the oven and then think, well, I'll just turn this on 700 degrees, heat this thing up. You're going to burn the outside, the inside will be goo, or take it out of the oven early. Like, everything has a seasoning and a timing. And God is no different. God designed all of these things to make us wait so that we would understand his ways. We would understand that it's his love for us as our divine Father, just like we do for those of us that have children or our pets. Like, we have a purpose. Like, we know something they don't know, right? We know something our kids don't know, which is why we have to tell them, you have to wait before you can do this, or wait before you date, or wait for so many different things. I know growing up as a kid in the 80s, I mean, those of you who remember having like a 9-inch TV with a little dial on it that had like four to five, channels on it, and you had bunny ears, and we'd like wrap them up in tin foil. And, if you had siblings, you had to like rock, paper, scissors to see who was going to hold the tin foil bunny ears and watch the show and who was not. And so, I mean, the patience that we developed because we had no choice. So when you're in a situation, even if you're in a situation right now, whatever it is, what is it? What are you waiting for? What is something that's making you wait? That's hard. Waiting isn't easy. It's promised that it's hard, but that's what makes when it comes true. When the promise is fulfilled, we have that reward, and we're so much more grateful. We're thankful because we didn't just have it handed to us. Don't we take things for granted if it's just like, oh, here you go. Here you go, right? But having to wait for it, even when you're baking a cake or making a gourmet meal or Thanksgiving, and you see everybody, gathering around the kitchen table, but mom's still finishing the turkey and the dressing and whatever your mom or family or whoever cooks, right? And you're sitting there just waiting for the meal. The anticipation grows, your mouth salivates. There's just all these like physical things that are happening to kind of show that you're ready for the reward. And we feel that way as humans, and it's hard. It's hard to imagine waiting 4 minutes for a Hot Pocket if that's your thing, right? Um, you know, but I mean, even when I was in the Marine Corps, it was hurry up and wait, get geared up, suited up, get in line, get in formation, get there 15 minutes early, or you're late, on time is late. 15 prior is on time, the whole thing. And we'd get there and we get in formation, and we'd stand perfectly still, and we would wait, sometimes forever, just for nothing. But the Lord tells us to be anxious for nothing, and to, he has some great promises on the fact that he is not only telling us to wait, but that he's with us in the waiting. You may hear my dog barking. Real life, people, real life. So I have my book that you guys know, God's Promises for Your Every Need. So in here, there is one section. It says what to do when you are in need of patience. So there's a few in here. Let's see. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, and faith. So there's all these luscious, amazing, beautiful fruits of the Spirit in these promises, right? And slap in the middle of that is long suffering. He knew he needed to sandwich that long suffering in there with the sweet stuff, with the love and the joy and the peace, which he promises. Those, gentleness, goodness, faith. He promises all of those sandwiched in because he intended for you to wait and have those too. It wasn't like an a la carte situation. It was an all you can eat buffet, right? So in case that You're not clear. This is Galatians 5:22. If you want to look it up, read in depth around this message. But this is something he promised. He said in Isaiah 40, 31, chapter 40, verse 31. This is one of my favorites. They that wait upon the Lord, those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Now, when you think of eagle wings, what do you think of? Like super strong, super tough, like aerial, like power, right? Not wings of butterflies that can't fly in the rain. Now, there's a big story behind the power of the butterfly, but what I want you to get here is he says, if you wait, you will have wings of an eagle. Not wings of a butterfly or a finch, but like an eagle, like a super awesome, powerful, unstoppable beast of a bird that will fly higher than all the other birds, right? So I want you to get that. But it's the waiting that creates the wings. We don't just get the wings. We have to wait to get the wings. He says, you shall run and not be weary. Anybody a runner? Anybody like to run? Anybody want to run? A friend of mine, Hannah, she just ran a marathon in January, and she came to the house the other day. She was telling me all about it. I mean, can you even imagine a marathon? Some of you, it may be a half marathon or 10K or a 5K, or maybe you just like a 1 mile fun walk. But he's saying, if you wait on me, the Lord, he's promising that you will run and not be weary. And he doesn't say for how long. He just says you can run and you will not be weary. And that's kind of cool to think about, because as a Marine, I'll tell you, like, for me, physical strength is super important. I see that as a sign of power physically as a human. But what he's talking about is spiritual strength, spiritual wings, spiritual running, spiritual walking. He says you will walk and you will not faint. You will walk and you will not faint. So when God makes promises and he delivers on his promises, he's not just talking about your physical body or your mental faculties or your emotional stability. He's talking about your spirit spiritually. So even if if I have, these disc problems, and I have days where I can't even stand up and walk without my husband helping me, I can still hold true that he's going to give me wings like an eagle. I'm going to be able to run without getting weary and walk without fainting, even if my physical body fails. He's promising far beyond that. So I'm going to speak to the people right now who are listening, who have physical challenges, who have physical illness or sickness or weakness. And it's awful, right? It can be awful because you think, well, I can't, so I can't. And a Marine we don't believe we can, or we don't believe we can't, right? We believe we can, and we're going to figure it out. But I've had to learn how to surrender that physical weakness, even though I was trained that there is none. It's mental, and mental toughness, and that creates that physical ability. But I can't physically do the things that I used to do when I was in the Marine Corps, which was 25 years ago, I might add. And, I have to make peace with that, even though mentally I'm thinking, oh, that makes me weak. But in my physical weakness, I am strong in him spiritually. And I want you to consider surrendering your physical, needs to him and letting him fill you up with that spiritual strength. There are so many times that I wanted to be physically strong, and have been, even in pain, even in mental, physical, and emotional pain. I still would find a way to, on my own, be tough, be strong, endure the pain. But what I found was that there was always a limit to what I could do. There was a limit that I would hit, and I would have to surrender at some point, tap out, or whatever you want to call it. But in him, even if I can't physically, I can in all these other ways. That's limitless. And for a Marine, to say, hey, you can be limitless. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm good with that. Anybody with me? It's like, okay, yeah, I will accept limitless running, limitless walking, limitless wings and flying. But he's not talking about physical. And once we surrender to the fact that, I also have an autoimmune disease that it's my celiac is crazy because I can't even walk into restaurants because I'm so highly allergic to gluten. And I also have an allergy to all dairy products, egg products, chickens, peppers. There's all these things I cannot eat or come in contact with or consume or do anything. So I'm super duper limited. I feel like I should be in a bubble. That can kind of wear on you emotionally. In fact, it does. There's days that I just cry because I'm just frustrated. My body, my physical body will cry. My spirit knows that it's okay. It's okay because he's got me and he's going to help me through that. But there's just something about letting go of that physical, isn't there? He says also in Psalms 27, verse 14, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he'll strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Now get that. He says, I'll strengthen your heart. Wait on the Lord. He didn't say, I'm going to, give you a body of steel. He says, I'll strengthen your heart, because your heart is where he is. It's your faith. It's your trust. It's where Jesus is, right? It's everything, your spirit, everything is in your heart. So he's making a play on words, saying it's in your heart, but it's your spirit, who you are inside, not your physical body. Okay. So these were things that when I was younger in my pain, younger in my understanding about who he is, his purpose, his ways, how he could heal me and deliver me and move me from that pain. Even though I'm still in it, I'm still in it right now. I still mentally, physically, emotionally can surrender to allow him to spiritually fill me. He can spiritually fill me. So he also says in Romans 8:25, there it is, Romans chapter 8, one of my favorites, because it's so much truth. He calls so much truth. But if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. It's basically saying, well, if you believe it, then you'll wait. If you believe it in your heart of hearts, in your spirit, if you hope for it, if you believe for it, even if you can't see a thing, but you believe, you will wait. You will wait patiently for it. And that is where he will fulfill that promise. He will fulfill that promise to you. So there is another one in here. Also that speaks to it. Okay, Psalms 40, verse 1. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me, and he heard my cry. When we're in pain, isn't it true that sometimes we just want to be heard? If you're out there, maybe you can send me a comment or thoughts. Do you feel heard? Where do you feel heard? Or are there times where you're surrounded by all these people, yet you feel so alone because you're in your pain, you're hiding it, you're trying to manage it, you're focusing on the long suffering, not the peace and the joy, and you're surrounded by all these people who you think have a perfect life because of their Facebook highlight reel or their Instagram posts are so perfect, and you're sitting here suffering in pain. And don't we just want to be heard? Well, he'll hear you, and feeling heard from God, I think, is much more fulfilling than talking to another human that will pretend like they heard you, but not act like they heard you. And then, we just go right back to the same old, same old. So if you really want to feel heard and fulfilled in that moment and be seen, take it to God. When we take it to gossip, it doesn't work out too well. But when we take it to the Lord, he can give us a peace that passes all understanding. Passes all understanding. So I really appreciate all the waiting that I've had to do in my life, even though there were times that I would just straight up like, why? Why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this. I'm so frustrated. Kind of goes back to some of those transformational moments that we were talking about. But I love this, like when we're having to wait, do what waiters do. Serve. Serve. When we have to wait, do what waiters do. Serve. So where can you serve? Where can you surrender, all this physical stuff, and allow your spirit to receive the other things that God promises, the peace, the joy, the gentleness, um, all those things, the love, all those things that God promises are sandwiched with the long suffering. So it's not like you just get the waiting and you just get the suffering and then you just get the pain. The other stuff comes too, but what you focus on grows. What you focus on grows. So be careful that you're not so focused on what's going wrong that you miss all the good things that come with it. You can talk to a woman that just had a baby. 9 to 10 months, there's all these suffering pieces to the puzzle. Yet there's so many women out there that love to take photos of her pregnant belly and holding her belly and feeling the baby kick and, the conversations, the cute outfits, the maternity clothes, the glowing, right? There's so much good attached to the waiting, but we have to remember that it's there. If we don't remember it's there, if we're so focused on serving the pain that we forget to serve what's good, then the waiting becomes unbearable, becomes difficult. So I would just ask you, think through that just a little bit. There were many times in my life that I've had to wait I remember sitting in my very first pink Cadillac. It was at career conference. It was in 2010, March 2010. I was sitting at career conference, sitting in my first pink Cadillac. It was the demo that they had out on the floor at Expo. And I was smelling the leather and like touching the steering wheel and thinking, oh my gosh, I was in a red jacket, which at the time meant I had a few team members, but I wasn't like a director or anything, and I felt God move and say that, he was going to be promising, because I said, Lord, I want this. I want this pink Cadillac. I just, that represents success and hard work and helping people. And he's like, well, if you help enough people, then it will come. So, there's times in the Bible when people mention to me scripture, but they misquote it, or they only quote like tiny little parts. And he's like, if you ask, God will give it to you. He will give it to you according to what you do first. So it's scriptural that God will fulfill his promises to you in due season, but also when you fulfill what he is calling you to do. So 10 years, 10 years fast forward, I had worked through serving others, learning how to be a great consultant and director, honoring my customers, and moving across the country, working through divorce, working through health issues, all these things. COVID hit. Lord, there was just so many things that happened in that waiting time that were so hard, from my celiac to a necessary and challenging divorce that was heartbreaking for me and for my girls. And there was just so much in that God had to work through the broken pieces for everybody. And God still healed all of it. I'm thankful for that. But even in that, I knew that promise that pink Cadillac was there if I kept my hand to the plow and letting him guide me. So he had to guide me through what was coming, what was next steps. So, I didn't always focus on that pink Cadillac. I was too busy focusing on the task at hand, the trauma at hand, the chaos at hand. But I had it in my heart. I knew that he had promised, he had shown me that, and I held on to it. So I was just a good and faithful servant, right? When we're waiting, serve. Good and faithful servant. Where can I, bless this person? Where can I support this organization? How can I help others? Even as I'm in pain, let me focus on others, and not to ignore my pain, but so God could heal my pain, because I was helping to heal the people that had prayed for God to help them. And he called me and said, okay, Rita, I have a job for you. I know you're in pain, and I promise I'm going to heal your pain, but I need you to go help this person that's in pain while I, knit your, pieces back together in the right way. I need you to go help them on earth. And so we can be doves. We can be doves for people. while we're in pain, knowing that God is reknitting our pieces together because he's using us in our pain. God never wastes our pain, even in the waiting. Even in the waiting, when we think it's so silly and we just can't even imagine, why am I waiting? Why am I waiting? Right? And through my back injury, I've spent 7 or 8 years in bed, still working my business. And the days that I'm up, I'm up. And the days I'm not, nobody would know until I'm telling you now. The ice packs on my neck and my head and my back, and, all the rehab exercises and the, laying on the floor, trying to do floor exercises while I'm in a pile of tears. Nobody would know that stuff, that I was waiting to feel better. I'm still waiting to feel better, but I'm not laying in bed doing that. I'm here giving you hope that he's still going to use it, and he's still going to call you to do assignments while he's taking care of the assignments that you're asking him for. So he will fulfill his promises to you. I love this right over my head. Blessed is she who has believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her. And I keep that over my shoulder because I want to remember that. Like he's promised these things, but he also is looking for your steps. We can't ask God to bless our steps if we don't move our feet. So keep that in mind as you're waiting, that the waiting doesn't have to be still. We can be still in our spirit, but move our feet in our body, in our person. So if you're in a waiting period, where can you serve? What can you do that will allow God to bring joy into your life, love into your life, peace into your life while you're long suffering? All that time I was waiting for a pink Cadillac, and we finished it in June of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, after a divorce, after meeting Steven, the love of my life, and us dating and then getting engaged, and then COVID happened. We got married during COVID. Then, trying to, we've got all 5 of our kids we meshed together, and there's just all these different ups and downs that happened in the waiting. So what are you missing out on? What are you missing out on? If you're waiting, there's something you're supposed to see while you're being seasoned. So that when you get the blessing, when you get what you've asked for, when you get the answer, even if it's yes or no or redirection or protection, he's never late. He's always on time. He always has a purpose. And his ways are with love, like a father. Like a father, just like you as a parent are with your child. If you're telling your child to wait, there's a reason. And I want to give you hope today that if you're waiting, it's okay. And that the answer is coming. Hopefully not 40 years, but he is always on time. He's at the end, and he's for you. He's for me. So even if I don't get the answer right away, yeah, I'm allowed to have emotions and be upset. But are you focusing on the other fruits of the Spirit that are going to show up in the valley? Valleys are lush, okay? The mountaintop is for the views, but the valley is for the growth. So if you're waiting, something's growing, something's seasoning, something is developing a purpose that you can't possibly imagine until it comes. Thank you guys so much. I hope you'll have a great day. Thank you for listening. If you know someone that could be blessed by this message that's waiting or struggling or needs to feel seen or heard or wants some type of hope that something good is coming, please share this message. All right, I will talk with you guys next time.